All right, hey everyone. Thanks for registering and attending. This webinar is going to be Business Intelligence Reporting and Dashboarding Fundamentals. My name is Ethan Connor. I'm a technical account manager with Grape City, focusing on Wyn Enterprise, which is our web-based enterprise business intelligence solution with built-in tools for reporting, dashboarding, data governance, data modeling, data federation, multi-tenant support, and much, much more. We are going to take a look at Wyn a little bit later on today. Um, Afterward, if you have more questions or anything like that, you'll have access to my email address. You can follow up with me directly. Um, at the end here, we will have a Q&A as per this agenda here. We'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes answering questions, whatever those may be. So go ahead and send them in as you think of them. We'll kind of take as many as we can at the end there. Now, like I said, if there are any that don't get addressed at the end, I'll be following up with everyone whose questions didn't get answered via email directly. So to kind of cover what we're going to talk about today. So what are we going to get into here? Well, first we're going to talk about an introduction to business intelligence. So for those of you who are completely new to business intelligence, maybe you don't even know what it is or what it entails, we're going to talk about what that is. We're going to take a look at some industry numbers and statistics. So talk about adoption rates and things like that. Moving into the typical BI process. So again, keyword typical there. So if you're an organization who hasn't implemented anything on the BI front, maybe this will kind of give you an idea of where to start or how to do it. And then we'll kind of focus on where the reporting and dashboarding fit into that. So the data visualization side of things. Now, the next section is going to be business intelligence reporting, where we're going to cover the characteristics and benefits of business intelligence reports, as well as comparing ad hoc versus enterprise or canned reports. That's something that comes up a lot in my day-to-day conversations with a lot of our customers. What the difference is, when to use which, and things like that. We'll wrap that section up with some best practices for BI reports. Really just some things to keep in mind as you're building reports with really any solution, whether you're using Wyn Enterprise or maybe Active Reports or some other solution that you use to build reports. We'll move into business intelligence dashboarding. So another really hot topic that I hear about all the time as well. What's the difference between reports and dashboards? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to cover the key differences, when to use which, why you should be using which one, moving into the purpose and benefits of business intelligence dashboards. So, really what's the end goal? What's the point of these? And then finally, wrapping that section up with some more best practices. Again, things to just keep in mind. It's not, nothing you need to abide by strictly. It's just kind of best practices and things to keep in the back of your head as you build dashboards. And again, whether that's with Wyn Enterprise, whether that's with a different dashboarding solution or whatever that may be. We'll get into reporting and dashboarding with Wyn Enterprise so you can kind of see it in action. I have a couple different things that we'll touch on. We'll build a dashboard, we'll build a report, we'll kind of take a look at what you can do with Wyn Enterprise as an end user. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with a Q&A. So we'll kind of address all of these questions that are going to come in. But like I said, as you have questions that pop up, just go ahead and send them in the chat. We'll address those towards the end of the webinar here. And anything that we don't touch on, we can follow up with you via email on those. So, business intelligence, what is it? Well, I like this definition here at the top. It's transforming data into actionable insights that inform a business decision. So we're not taking raw data. We're not just taking a CSV file and getting insights out of it. We're taking data, we're modeling it, we're adding a semantic layer to it, we're transforming it in some way, shape, or form so that we can actually get an insight from it. And not only do we get an insight from it, but it's an actionable insight. So it's something that we discover from the data and we say, this is the cause, this is what I can do to address it, and that is going to inform that business decision. Now, 87% of organizations have low BI and analytics maturity. So if you're one of those organizations within that 87%, don't feel bad because you're obviously not alone here. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you not only have a better understanding of what BI is and in the kind of fundamentals of the visualization side of things, but if you are in that 87% with low BI and analytics maturity, hopefully you can kind of be pushed to go to that next level once you have a better understanding of the visualization and analytics side of things. So in 2018, so just last year, dashboarding, reporting, end user self-service, advanced visualization, and data warehousing were the top 5 most important technologies and initiatives strategic to BI. So we are going to cover two of those within this next hour or so. And then finally, upon implementation, business analytics results in an average ROI increase over 5 years with an average payback of 1.6 years for every $4.5 million spent. So looking at a typical BI process, and again, keyword is typical here. So this isn't going to be applicable to every organization's BI process. This is just a traditional process here. So you have your data sources on the far left here. Now that could be from a CRM or an ERP or an SCM, and you have your ETL phase next. So you're going to be taking that data, whether it's stored in SQL Server or Excel or JSON or maybe just a CSV file. You're kind of combining it. So defining those relationships between that different data, you're transforming it, restructuring it, adding a semantic layer, so making the tables a little bit more business user friendly, storing that in a data warehouse, leading you into the data discovery phase. So the data discovery phase is where you're going to have your data mining, so looking for trends and doing all sorts of analytics on the data itself. And the data visualization falls into the data discovery phase as well. So what I mean by data visualization is kind of the real reason we're here right now, is the reporting and dashboarding side of things. So looking at this data and visualizing the trends, the data, visualizing the actual data itself to be able to take an insight away from it. And then finally, once that visualization is published, whether that's pushed to a server or printed out on a piece of paper and presented to your manager or put in a PowerPoint or for a meeting or whatever that may be, it's ultimately being used to make an informed, data-driven business decision. So getting into reporting, business intelligence reporting is all about presenting data at detailed levels to empower the end user to make informed business decisions. So you're not presenting data as a kind of visual at a glance level. That's going to be dashboards. With a report, you're presenting data at detailed levels. So you're focusing on the detailed underlying data behind those at a glance KPIs and metrics that you might see in a dashboard. Business intelligence reports are typically going to be tabular with very minimal visualizations. And again, that's just the most common use for business intelligence reports. Some users prefer to have a lot of charts in their BI reports, but typically they are going to be more tabular than visual. Reports are going to be consumed either online or offline. So whether you're viewing them as a PDF on a web application or viewing it as a printed out piece of paper, it's going to reflect the same data. It's going to tell the same story, no matter which way you're looking at it. And then it's for tactical purposes. So it's concrete and it's oriented towards specific objectives and initiatives. It's not telling the big picture. It's not giving you trends. It's not giving you, predictive analytics or anything like that. It's just focusing on specific objectives and initiatives, and kind of tying into that online or offline consumption method. It's going to have very minimal interactivity. So there's going to be very minimal drill down. Nothing's going to change if you click on a section of a pie chart or anything like that. That's going to be where dashboards come into play. So with a report, you're basically going to have your layout. And typically it's just going to be what you see is what you get. There's not going to be really too much drill down or drill through or anything like that, unless it's a highly advanced business intelligence report being consumed through a web application. With a report, it's not an at a glance consumption, like I've said. It's going to be, your attention is going to be required to be focused to really understand the story of the data. So you're not just looking at key metrics and KPIs. You're looking at trends in the data that are reported in that actual tabular report. And finally, with a business intelligence report, it's going to be presenting data that's going to be easily understood and acted on. So two things there to highlight. It's going to be understood. So first of all, if you're presenting data and it's not easy to understand as a business end user, it's not an effective report. You need to be telling a clear story with that report, and then that story needs to be actionable. So you need to be able to make a business decision that's data-driven, that's informed, that's easy to defend based on the data presented in this report. So it's not just presenting a report for the sake of reporting on it. It's presenting a report to be acted on. And that is business intelligence reporting. And if it doesn't meet those two criteria, in my opinion, it's not a true or effective business intelligence report. Now, the benefits of these reports, well, you're collecting and presenting data ready to be analyzed, including historical data that can be tracked over time. So you're not only just presenting, or you're not presenting raw data, you're collecting and presented data that's ready to be analyzed, meaning the story is there to be told. It's just, it's presented to the end user, and it's ready to be acted on by that end user. So it's not just presenting raw data; it's presenting data in a way that can be understood. It's summarized, and it's telling a story. Ultimately, it's not just a collection of different unrelated data sets or anything like that. You're going to empower your end users with the knowledge to become experts in their area of business. So what I mean by that is somebody who may not know historical sales data for their product or something like that. Well, you're presenting a report that's giving them that knowledge. And then finally, and this, in my opinion, is the most important aspect here. This is having the underlying figures to back up actions and explain business decisions. So not only to back up, but also to inform, to defend, and like it says, to back up actions and explain business decisions. So if you do make a data-driven, informed business decision that ultimately doesn't go as planned, well, you have that report to defend it. Now, BI reporting, ad hoc and canned reports. This is something that I talk about a lot with customers, when to use which. So let's take a look at this table on the right-hand side here. The bullet points on the left are more kind of summaries of this table, so we'll take a kind of deep dive into this a little bit. So with a canned report versus an ad hoc report, well, let's look at the author first of all. With a canned report, it's typically going to be built by a technical power user, so IT or a developer or maybe a DBA, someone who's used to the report tool, who understands the data schema in your database. They're typically going to either be technical or a power user or most likely both. Ad hoc reports, they're going to be typically non-technical business users. Now, the audience for a canned report is going to be a much wider audience than an ad hoc report. So canned reports, if the audience is, the entire organization, so maybe, company-wide sales data or, just quarterly reports or something like that. And that doesn't even need to be the entire organization, but even an entire department. That would be a canned report. Whereas an ad hoc report, that's going to be a more concentrated group for an audience. So maybe it's just yourself. So you're building a report for just yourself. Or maybe it's yourself and your teammates, or yourself and your boss or something like that. It's just a very niche audience. And then the data detail level for a canned report, it's typically going to be more high level with some optional drill down. So it's going to be kind of not aggregated data, but kind of summarized to some degree. It's going to be the story of your data. Whereas with ad hoc reports, it's typically going to be more detailed. It may be drilled down from a higher level. So it's not looking at the story of the data. It's more looking at the cause of the story of the data. So the story may be, hey, sales are up. Well, an ad hoc report might say, well, why are sales up? And that's kind of the difference for the data detail level. Now, in terms of reusability, this next row down, canned reports are always going to be reusable. So it's not a report that you look at once and then you never look at it again. That's an ad hoc report. Canned reports are going to be, looked at daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever they may be. They're going to be reusable where the data is refreshed, but ultimately the result of that report, so whatever story is being reported by the report, it's going to be relevant multiple times. It's going to be recurring. Ad hoc reports, probably be uncommon if it were reusable. You're typically taking a snapshot in time of the data for a single use. So like I said, well, if the story is that your sales are up this week and you want to know why the sales are up this week, well, that's not going to be relevant, in 3 months when sales aren't up, or when they're down. It's going to be different. It's going to be a different use case. So you're typically not going to reuse an ad hoc report. Now, the data used in a canned report is typically going to be batched and scripted. So if a technical user is building a canned report, well, they know how to do the data governance. They know how to limit that data. An ad hoc report, it's really just determined by the report author if they can even choose. So if they have the permissions to write their own query and they know how to do it, then it's going to really be up to them to bring in that data. But if it's, and more likely, it's just going to be determined by the admin on a BI solution or of a reporting tool as to what data they can use. So it's really up to them, though, ultimately. And then whether the report is actually editable. So can anyone change it? Well, with a canned report, It's hard to say. The answer is sometimes. So that's really, again, up to the administrative side of things as to whether end users can edit canned reports or not. Um, but with ad hoc reports, they're always going to be editable because it's either a modified canned report if they can, or it's going to be just a custom report created from scratch. If anyone has questions on this, and I do see some questions coming in as we're going, keep coming, keep bringing them in. We'll address them at the end there during that dedicated time. Like I said, if we can't get to all of them, we'll continue the conversation through email. So best practices through BI reports. First of all, and this is the most important thing out of anything else when you're doing reports for end users, understand the requirements of the report before you build it. So what I see in a lot of cases is I'll talk to customers and they'll say, well, we have these reports for the end users, but we really don't know how they use them or why they even want them. Well, that's a big problem because not only is it a waste of development resources, but you really don't understand how to build an effective report for those users. So before you build a report, so let's say you have a request coming in to generate a canned report. Well, ask these questions. So the who, why, what, where, and how. Who? So who's going to use this report? AKA, when this report is finished and built and exported as whatever format that may be, or just presented in whatever way, who's actually going to be looking at it? Get all of the stakeholders and the users of that report. Why? Why do you need this report? Um, and this kind of ties into the how at the very bottom there as well. So why do you need this report? Well, what's it telling? So when you have this report, what's the story going to be and how is it going to be used? So what actions are going to be taken based on that story? Um, the what, look at what metrics should be reported. So are you reporting on sales data? Are you reporting on marketing data? Are you reporting on, customer satisfaction? What are you looking at? What metrics do you want to see? And then where. So where, or more accurately, how will this report be viewed? So are users going to be looking at this on a piece of paper? Are they going to be looking at it in Excel? Are they going to be looking at it on the web, on their smartphone, on a tablet? Get an idea of how it's going to be viewed so you can build it according to that. And then in terms of design, well, a lot of people like to go crazy with their report design unnecessarily. And again, it's a waste of time. Design with simplicity above all else. So first of all, make sure your report is titled appropriately. I see reports titled sales report all the time, and that is it's confusing. I mean, you can interpret that in a lot of different ways. So if I have a weekly sales report by salesperson and product, I know exactly what that report is telling me. I know exactly what that report is for, and I know the story that it's going to tell me. Sales report, well, that could be weekly, that could be daily, that could be monthly, it could be by a certain product, it could just be aggregated data. I don't know what it's going to tell me. So title it appropriately. When you have your data, label it clearly. So with a tabular report, make sure your column headers are accurate, make sure they're clear. So imagine that a business user is reading your report. Well, are they going to understand it if they've never seen your database before? Same thing with data labels. If you do have any visualizations on a report, make sure you include data labels so that it's clear what the graph is actually reflecting. Now, in terms of visualizations, this is kind of pretty subjective in terms of user preference. Again, business intelligence reports should typically be tabular, although some users like to see charts on there, logos and images. Keep them minimal, but if that is a requirement, make sure they're relevant. So with a logo, make sure it's an organizational logo or something like that. Images, don't have any extraneous images, and charts, make sure they're telling the same story that the rest of the report is telling. Now with a theme, keep it simple. Don't use any flashy colors or anything like that. Don't use yellow borders or fonts or anything like that. Keep it simple. And then finally, and most importantly, take a look at the questions you asked above before you built that report. When you have the report finished, does it answer all of the requirements according to the answers to those questions? If it does, that is a good BI report. If it doesn't, go back and redo it because you didn't answer all of these questions and you really need to. Otherwise, you're going to have to redo it later on when the end user complains that, hey, this report doesn't answer my question. Well, if you don't ask these questions, you're never going to know that. And if you don't ask yourself, does it answer all of those questions? Again, it's just going to be a waste of your time, ultimately. And then finally, with visualizations in a report, if the user is saying, hey, I want a bunch of KPIs and a bunch of metrics and 7 different charts on here, no data tables, um, consider if a dashboard is more appropriate. And if that's what they're telling you, if they're telling you, hey, I want a lot of visualizations, not a lot of data tables, very high interactivity, you go with the dashboard. So make sure that you have a tool like Wyn Enterprise that has both that reporting and dashboarding functionalities built into the same place, so you don't have to jump between different solutions. Now, what's the difference between reports and dashboards? This is something that I get asked almost on a daily basis when I'm talking to customers. Well, here's your answer right here. So with reports and dashboards, let's take a look at data granularity. So first of all, with reports, it's going to be more detailed data. So it's going to be transactional. It's not going to be kind of aggregated or summarized. That's going to be for a dashboard. In terms of consumption, reports are going to be consumed either online or offline, whereas dashboards, very, very, very rarely will they ever be consumed offline. They're typically always going to be consumed online because they are highly interactive. So you need to be able to slice and dice and drill down on the fly on dashboards. In terms of interactivity, reports are going to have low interactivity, so very few drill downs, if any. Dashboards, very high interactivity, so a lot of drill down, a lot of slice and dicing, a lot of changing visualizations on the fly. All of that is going to be high interactivity. In terms of content, reports are going to be more tabular. Dashboards are going to be more visual. So dashboards are going to have a lot of charts, a lot of visualizations, whether that's pie charts or line charts or area or bar, whatever that may be. Very few data tables, although, they might have a table. Reports are going to be mostly tabular. If they have any charts at all, it might be 1 or 2 at most. Now, the attention required for a report is going to be high. So you're going to have to take an in-depth look at the actual content of the report to get the insights to take away from it. Whereas a dashboard, you should be able to take a look at a dashboard and kind of get the story of it within 30 seconds at most. So you should be able to take a quick look at a dashboard, get the KPIs and metrics and key takeaways just like that very quickly. If not, it's not doing a good job of reflecting that data in the way that a dashboard should. And then the purpose/usage, well, reports are going to be more tactical, meaning that they're addressing a specific objective or initiative, whereas dashboards are going to be more strategic, meaning they're taking a look at the big picture, kind of identifying, strategic ideas or strategies, to implement to kind of address those trends and patterns and things like that. Now, this is basically just a kind of visualization of reports and dashboards, with the y-axis being tactical and strategic. So tactical and discrete, those are going to fall into reports, no question about it. So an organizational chart, certificates, financial documents, packing slips, letters, orders, invoices, those are going to be reports, no question about it. The kind of gray areas where really you could use either reports or dashboards are going to be the top left and the bottom right. It's kind of dependent on the end user, what the key takeaways are, what the kind of goals of that document are going to be. It's kind of dependent more on the use case for that and the requirements that the stakeholders lay out for you. And then the top right, those are going to be dashboards. So those are going to be highly visual. You're going to be looking at trends and patterns and identifying opportunities and things like that. So those are going to be dashboards. Now, to summarize business intelligence dashboarding, well, we're presenting data at a very high level to empower the end user to make informed business decisions. So we're not looking at data on a detailed row level. We're looking at it on a very high level. So summarized and aggregated data, focusing on KPIs and specific metrics. So we're not really looking at the data behind that. We're looking at the data as a whole. Now it's typically very visual, so very chart heavy. We're going to be consuming these online. So, you're very rarely going to ever print a dashboard out because it's not going to have that interactivity that we need it to have. And it's going to be for strategic purposes. So it's going to help identify long-term goals and objectives and how to achieve them. Like I said, it's going to have very high interactivity. So slicing and dicing, drill down, changing visualizations on the fly, everything like that. it's going to tell the story of the data at a glance. So like I said, if you can't get the story of a dashboard within 30 seconds, it's not a well-built dashboard. Um, it's going to be presenting data to be easily understood and acted on. That's going to be familiar when I had my business intelligence reporting summary slide, because it's the exact same point. If you're presenting a dashboard and the data isn't easily understood and actionable, then it's not an effective BI dashboard. The benefits of BI dashboarding, this could really go on for quite a while, but the top 5: you can monitor business performance, you can highlight KPIs, identify trends and opportunities, slice and dice to visualize the story of the data, make informed data-driven business decisions. Like I said, there's much more than that, but those are kind of 5 key points. Now, business intelligence dashboarding best practices. This could this could be an hour-long webinar in and of itself. I could go on for days talking about this. Especially this third point down, choosing the appropriate visualization. There's so much material online, and really it's a big discussion point among industry professionals. We're going to kind of focus on a more top-level best practices, but that may be something we have another webinar on about in the future, as the choosing appropriate visualizations in your dashboards, which we'll touch on a little bit, but we won't go too in depth on that. So the first best practice I have here, it's very similar to the BI reporting side of things. It's interviewing the stakeholders. So figuring out who's going to use this report, what purpose does this dashboard serve, which KPIs and metrics do you want to see, what actions are going to be taken according to those KPIs and metrics, and how will this dashboard be viewed? So who's going to use it? Well, is it going to be your executive team? Is it going to be your sales manager? Is it going to be your marketing team? Who's going to actually use it? And what purpose does it serve? So, and that kind of ties in with the KPIs and metrics that you want to see. So what is this dashboard actually going to show me? When I view it, which KPIs do I need to see? And then which action should be taken according to those KPIs? So think of it like this. If I have a KPI for, sales target, and it's the sales revenue for the year is below my sales target for the year, that KPI should turn red, and you need to figure out, well, what are you going to do if that KPI is red and you are below target? You need to figure out what action is going to be actually taken so that you know how to kind of make those visualizations dynamic. And then how will the dashboard be viewed? Well, that's going to be the same thing. Is it going to be on a desktop? Is it going to be on a tablet? Is it on a smartphone? And a common answer to this is, well, I don't really know. So you need to kind of keep that in mind too, is that your users might be viewing a dashboard on a variety of different platforms. So moving on, planning the layout. Look at this visualization on the right-hand side here. This is more on the psychology side of things than anything, but when you're looking at a screen, the first thing that your eyes are drawn to are the top left. Moving on is the top right. Important and not urgent. So the top left should be your key KPIs. So that question of which KPIs and metrics do you want to see, put those in the top left. That's going to be your kind of key takeaways. Now, the important and not urgent to the right, there's going to be other, maybe other KPIs, or maybe a chart or something like that. Your bottom left is going to be urgent but not important KPIs or visualizations. So again, this is kind of subjective, and this is dependent on what the actual dashboard content is. But ultimately, your least important items should be going in the bottom right, because that's where your eyes are going to go last. Now, moving on, choosing the appropriate visualizations. And this is what I said earlier. I could talk for hours about that. But make sure that it makes sense as to how you're visualizing the data. If you have, data over time, don't use, don't use a funnel or a tree map or anything like that. Use a line or an area or a column. And that, again, that's a topic in and of itself. We'll cover more a little bit later when we're actually working in Wyn Enterprise with the dashboarding tool. But there's plenty of resources out there. If anyone has questions on that or is looking for some of those resources, send a question in, and I'll follow up with you via email after and send some of that your way. Moving on, so highlighting key information. So using color to draw attention to important metrics. Well, if you have outliers in some of your charts, maybe add conditional visualizations to highlight those in red or in green or something like that. Or if a certain month your customer satisfaction was significantly above your, kind of target. Highlight those and kind of make note of those, because that's something that your end users will want to see. And then finally, grouping related metrics together. Well, this is very straightforward. It's just keep everything together that makes sense to be kept together, right? So if you have sales data, group that together. If you have marketing data, group that together. Traditionally, you're not going to combine those two, but if it is a dashboard, that's kind of a very top level, maybe for an executive, it's just a company overview of how each department is doing. Well, group all of that together, respectively, so that you're not having, kind of unrelated data mixed in with other unrelated data points. So kind of group everything together so that it's easy as a business end user to view this dashboard. And like I said, ultimately, they need to be able to easily understand the story of what that dashboard is telling. Some sources that I used for this presentation. We're going to get into reporting and dashboarding with Wyn Enterprise now. We're going to build a sales summary dashboard and a sales transaction report. So I'm going to switch over to here. This is Wyn Enterprise. This is a documents portal that we have. So end users would log into Wyn Enterprise, whether it's a standalone server for an enterprise or whether it's embedded within a SaaS application or some other web application. This is where they would access their reports and dashboards. Now, I kind of cheated a little bit. I laid out the layout of this dashboard previously, and I did some very minor formatting for time's sake. So what we have here, this is just a simple layout here. So what we're going to be looking at is gross profit for a sample retail company. So notice that I don't have any actual data in here. So all of these charts are empty. So you'll still get a look for how users can build dashboards in Wyn. To give you a brief overview of what we have here, we have our visualizations on the left-hand side here. We have some components here down below, so rich text and image. And then we have our slicers and filters. Right now in this dashboard, we're going to be using two KPIs. So on the top here, these are KPIs. We have a slicer here for year, a slicer down here for country, a column chart here, a bar chart here, and a KPI matrix down here. So let's go ahead and add some data into this. So first things first is we're going to use our column, and you can see I already have a data set attached to this dashboard. And this is where you're going to basically bind this data to the charts. So we have our buckets here. So what we can do is take revenue and drag it into the values bucket. And then we can take planned revenue and drag this into the same bucket so that it's going to compare basically revenue versus the planned or target revenue. And then we're going to categorize that by year. So now what we have is a story of, okay, 2015 through 2018, how did we do in terms of actual revenue versus planned revenue? So what we can do here is format this a little bit to be a little bit cleaner. So we can say actual revenue. And that's going to change in the legend at the bottom of this chart here. And then we can do the same thing here. We can say target revenue. And then notice we don't have a title on here. We don't have data labels because we don't really need it. With the legend tells us what it's kind of showing. So we're seeing the actual revenue versus the target revenue, and we're looking at it over 4 years' time. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Ethan, shouldn't be using an area chart or a line chart, like this or like this or like this. And you can see here, Wyn dashboards enables you to actually very easily change the type of visualization on the fly here. Well, I have it as a column chart because we're not looking at the trends of actual revenue or target revenue over time. We're looking at the comparison between the two over time. So we want to highlight more so the difference of actual revenue versus target revenue rather than how one of those two specifically changed over time, if that makes sense. So it's kind of, that's why I'm going with a column chart here, but you can see here, I could very easily change it to be one or the other. Now moving on, we're going to do this bar chart here. And you can see I have a pre-titled line here, and this is where I was cheating a little bit. So it's just gross profit by product line. So what we're going to do is take our gross profit, add that in, and then add in our product line here. And now we have where the data labels are cut off a little bit, but that's okay. When we go to run it and preview it, the labels should be shown in full. Now, what if we want to sort this? Well, we can easily add a sort, and this is actually, you should do this when you're comparing different values like this across categories. You should always have these sorted so we can apply them. and now it's very easily sorted in descending order. Um, moving on, we're going to use our KPI matrix. So here we're going to do every product as its own row, and then we're going to take a look at gross profit. So we should see, so we have our product on the left-hand column here, and then gross profit. And then we're going to actually do a little spark line so we can see gross profit, and then gross profit over a 4-year time. So we have gross profit from 2015 to 2019. So we can see here, this top value here, the Trail Chef water bag. Well, we can see it increased over 2015 to 2018, but then it looks like this last year kind of decreased a little bit. And that's going to be a trend that we see with all of the products because we can see that in this bar here, or this column here, sorry. Now, finalizing these other slicers, year, that's just going to go into drag there. Country, we're going to drag that into here. Gross profit, we're going to do that, and that's going to show us our total gross profit, total revenue. Now this one with a KPI, since we have a target revenue, we can actually make that as the target, and then it'll give us a delta value. So we can see that we're 39.72% above our target revenue. So now this is our basically dashboard. Keep in mind, as an executive, if I'm looking at this, so I'm the CEO of this retail company here. Well, my key metric is going to be this total gross profit and the total revenue, as well as the comparison of actual revenue versus total revenue. So that's why I have these in the top left here. So now what I can do is preview this. And here's my gross profit by product line. Here's my metrics, my KPIs. Now I can filter this. So if I want to have this slicer and only see data for China, I can do that. Everything on here is going to change to reflect that. So I can actually see that China, in 2018, it actually didn't meet the target revenue. So we were a little bit short on target revenue by about, 11 billion there. And then year, I can filter this to be only 2018. So I can focus on 2018 data only. So I can see, hey, in 2018, my total gross profit was 29 million, and so on and so forth. Now, a couple other things here, and I'm going to go back here so that all those filterings that I did are kind of negated. And then on the KPI matrix, one other thing to highlight here is that, well, what if I want to only see maybe the top 5 products or maybe the top 10? Well, what I can do is very easily just add that right here, and I can see the top 10, and that's going to be reflected here. And then I can actually go in and sort these by gross profit. So I can see the Hailstorm Titanium Wood Set, for all of our golf fans out there. That's going to be our highest gross profit product right there. So that's what you can do with Wyn dashboards. Now, a couple other things that are very, very cool is we can actually export this to a picture or a PowerPoint. If we do have a multi-page dashboard, so that's a very common thing, is having a dashboard with anywhere from 1 to 5 kind of tabs on it. We can actually export these as a PowerPoint or PNG. So that's dashboarding. Now, a couple other things here is going to be reporting. So again, I have a very simple report kind of laid out already, with just a logo and basically a title here, but the data is already attached. So what we're going to do here is just drag a table on here, and that's going to be here. And then for any of you who aren't familiar with Wyn reports or the report designer that we have, this is our toolbox here. So what I did there is really just drag and drop, but if I just click it, it'll actually insert it automatically here. So what I can do now, what we're going to have here is a BI report focusing on sales by country. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to add a group to this table because I want to group it by country. So I'm going to have my country in this row here. So I want to do shipping country. And then I don't want to label this one ship country here. I just want to have the country here. And then once we have that, we're going to need to tell the table to actually group it on the country. So we're going to identify it in this property here. And now what I want to do is just have the number of orders for each country. I want to have the total quantity. So I'm going to sum up the total quantity sold for all products, all orders across this entire country. And then I'm also going to have, what else can we put in here? Maybe number of customers total. So we're going to do a count on number of customers. And then we're actually going to take this and put it in this. Since it's going to be an aggregated field, we actually don't want it in the detail just due to the nature of the table here. So we can actually delete the details section here. And then if we preview this, what should happen is that we should get a table of countries with the number of orders and then the quantity sold and then the number of customers for each country. Now, what I actually have on this report is a parameter for the country. So what I can do when I run this is actually specify which countries I want. So if I want all of my countries, it'll give me all of them. But let's do Argentina, Belgium, and the UK for right now. And then when I preview this, there are my 3 countries. Now you'll notice there's still some kind of formatting things that I can do here. So what we're going to do is kind of center these, make them left aligned. If I had revenue fields, I could format them as revenue, things like that. Just for time's sake, we're not going to get too in depth on that. But what we can do is, first of all, delete this footer since we don't have anything in here. Or what we could do is actually take the number of orders and then do the quantity. And that way we're going to see the total across all of the countries that we see rather than just on the individual country level. So we can actually do that. So let's do that here too. And this is just typing in expressions in active reports. It's going to be the same syntax as you would use in Excel. So when we run this now, we should see aggregated fields in that table footer just to double check that that's going to work. Yeah, okay, so that should be working now. And there we go. So we can see the total quantity, number of customers across both of these countries, as well as on a specific country level. And for a CEO who has, of a global enterprise, it's important to be looking at this kind of data. It's telling us very simply, kind of how we're doing across different countries. Now, a couple formatting things that we can do here is, first of all, we can align left all of these very easily. So we'll do vertical align as middle, and then text align as left. We can merge these cells because we really don't need 3 cells for the same content. We can change this to, instead of the kind of pound sign orders, we can do total orders. We can change this to quantity sold, and we can do total customers here. And that way it'll just kind of do some very minor formatting. And when we do it here, we'll do select all. We'll get our full BI report here. And we can see here, there's still some room for improvement in terms of formatting. Like I said, we're kind of short on time. I want to leave enough time for all the Q&A that we're going to have here, as well as give you some time to fill out the post-webinar survey, so we won't get too in-depth into formatting. But you can see here, the only thing I started with was a logo and this title here. I built this complex BI table here within a couple minutes. So it is very easy to build these type of reports. Now, the last thing that I was forgetting here is to format these values as a number. So what we want to do is actually say a number. And now when we format it, or now when we run it and do all countries, what we're going to see is that these values here have a comma now, whereas they didn't before. And I can actually just take out those 2 decimals by changing this to N0 so that it uses 0 decimal points. So there you have it. There's the report designer. Like I said, we can add parameters. We can add different data sets. I have this current date and time here. There's a whole plethora of things that you can do within this designer. It is meant to be very user-friendly between both business users as well as technical power users. We do that by using advanced mode and basic mode in terms of properties. So the properties or the basic properties mode is going to give you some options formatted as icons and logos. So that's if I'm a business end user building a report or maybe just modifying this report. And then if I'm a technical power user, I have advanced mode where I have much more options in terms of properties. So getting into, we'll go ahead and save this, and then we'll go into the portal for a second here and just show you what else you can do here. So like I said, you can pop out the dashboard to be in a dedicated tab as a viewer. We can go into slideshow mode, and of course I didn't save that dashboard, so it's still just blank data here. but we can export it as a PowerPoint or PNG. For the report, if we view that, this is going to be our report viewer. So if we select all here, what we can actually do is, first of all, page nav, just single page view, or we can switch it to continuous view, where we can just scroll through rather than having to click through. We can also change it to galley mode, where it's going to get rid of all the page margins and automatic page breaks, so that it's one kind of continuous flow of data. Now going back to single page, what else can we do here? Well, we can print it directly from here, and we can also export it. So these are the export options that Wyn Reports does have. It's PDF, Excel, Word, CSV, HTML, PNG, and JSON. And then the last thing before we get into the wrap up and Q&A is the distribution methods. So what we have as an end user is the ability to not only categorize these reports and dashboards, but also set up scheduled tasks on them. So this applies to both reports and dashboards, but with reports, what you can do is set up a distribution schedule. So what we can do is set up a manual distribution where really all it does is just emails it out right now. So if I were to set this up, it would get emailed to whoever I specify to it right now. If I do a one-time, and I can actually specify it for a future date or time. Or if I do scheduled, what I can do is choose a scheduled template, so they can be distributed on schedules such as daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly, really whatever I want at whatever days of the week, whatever times of the day that I specify. So it's very highly customizable in terms of giving users a full self-service business intelligence experience. When I email it, I can send it out as a PDF or Excel, Word, CSV, HTML, image, or JSON. I can specify the email to, the reply to, the subject and body of the email, whether that file should be as an attachment or as a download link. And kind of that sets it up so that end users can distribute these reports on really whatever schedule they need to. So they don't need to come in here manually to get their report. They can just set it up on an automatic distribution schedule. They can also look at the history and revisions of these reports and dashboards and all of that, along with much, much more on the kind of data management side of things, which we won't get into today. But like I said, if anybody's interested in learning more about Wyn Enterprise, how they can integrate it within your own enterprise or application or whatever you may be using for BI right now, let's go ahead and start that conversation. Just follow up with me via email, and I'll be more than happy to kind of take you through a deep dive of Wyn Enterprise. So getting back to that, or getting back to the PowerPoint here, what we're going to do now is Q&A. So I'll go ahead and kind of start taking questions. I see there's a bunch in here, so we'll go ahead and get started with that. And then we'll kind of wrap up. Now, before I do that, after the questions, there will be an embedded survey here. So like I have here, please share your feedback. And then for getting started with Wyn Enterprise, for any next steps, the homepage is wyn.grapecity.com, wyn.grapecity.com. You can request a demo. You can start a free trial with downloading. There are a few next steps which we'll be emailing you about. And then, like I said, let's go ahead and start taking questions, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. Okay, I had to make a quick change there on the webinar, so sorry if I sound a little bit different right now. Just had to change a setting. So getting into questions, I see some hands are being raised. If you can go ahead and actually just send your questions in the question panel here. That's how I'll be taking them. So the first question, will the slides be available for download? Yes, they will. If you can please email wyn.experts@grapecity.com. That's going to be wyn.experts@grapecity.com. I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of my presentation as well as a recording of this webinar. And we can kind of get in touch that way. And that applies to anyone else who's interested in kind of getting a customized one-on-one demo, just have random, or kind of miscellaneous technical questions about Wyn or anything like that. Go ahead and just email wyn.experts@grapecity.com. We'll kind of get that ball rolling that way. So how does Wyn Enterprise compare to Active Reports? Well, that's a really good question. Wyn is a different product than Active Reports in a few different ways. So first of all, Wyn includes different modules. So it is a web-based kind of all-encompassing business intelligence solution with both reporting modules as well as dashboarding modules. It's built more for a multi-tenant deployment for self-service BI and ad hoc reporting. They are kind of interchangeable for some use cases, although Wyn is going to be more for an enterprise business intelligence tool, whereas Active Reports is more of a .NET development tool focusing on reporting. So they're similar in some manners. They're very different in other ways. Now, I will say Wyn Reports, that report designer and the report viewer that we saw, that is built on the Active Reports engine. So there are some similarities in that regard. Pricing. So pricing for Wyn, that is on a quote basis, so it is dependent on a few different things. Now, to be completely transparent, we do have our competitive advantage with Wyn over our competitors by being per production server licensed. So we're not charging you based on the number of users who are accessing your application, who are, so you may have 10 users, you may have 10,000 users. At the end of the day, you're going to be paying the same price year over year. So with our competitors, some of them may be charging more as you kind of scale up in terms of number of users. That's not going to be the case for Wyn Enterprise. If you are interested in a quote, like I said, it is dependent on a few different things, such as number of modules, number of production servers, how you're load balancing it, whether that's an active load balancer or just a warm failover. It's dependent on quite a few things. So again, email wyn.experts@grapecity.com. We'll be in touch. We'll have our director of sales get you a quote for that. This is a good one. Support options. So we do offer a kind of similar support system as Grape City Developer Solutions does. We do email support, phone support, which both have a 24 business hour guaranteed response time, as well as live support. So we have a team that can get on live, go to meetings with you to kind of walk you through how to build some of your reports or things like that. We also offer custom training sessions. So if you do need us to, really hold your hand and kind of walk through step by step of setting up Wyn and building, all of your dashboards or all of your reports and then deploying them and all of that, we do offer customized kind of training options like that. What data sources does Wyn support? That's a good question. I didn't cover that in my demo. I should have, but that's going to be SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, as well as files. So we're supporting Excel, JSON, CSV, XML, and then a few more with MongoDB, ODBC, and OData. A competitor feature comparison chart is something we're actually working on. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, we'll have that actually up at some point. If you can, again, email us directly so we can kind of keep track of your requests for that, and we'll get that to you as soon as we have one complete. Active reports can be uploaded. So the question for all of you guys is, can active reports be imported into Wyn? The answer is yes, to some degree. So if there are Active Reports 13 reports and they're RDL or page reports, yes, they can be. Now, if they're code-based section reports, they'll need to be converted or recreated as RDL or page reports. So if they're RPX files, we actually do have an imports tool with Active Reports 13 that can convert those from an RPX to an RDLX. Otherwise, they're good to go. So RDL and page reports with Active Reports 13, yes, you can import them as is to Wyn. Otherwise, you'll either need to migrate them over or recreate them completely, which is something we're more than happy to assist with in terms of support or training. Is the UI designer for Active Reports different on Wyn versus AR? So Active Reports has a few different report designers. They have the Visual Studio Integrated Designer as well as the WinForms Standalone End User Designer. Those are both going to be very different to the Wyn Reports Designer. The Wyn Reports Designer is actually the Active Reports Web Designer with a few various enhancements. So there are some differences. That's something, we can set up a one-on-one demo to go into that kind of as a deep dive. Yeah, there's a few differences there. Question is, can I import existing Power BI dashboards into Wyn? No, you cannot. That would make life a lot easier for a lot of people, I know. But no, you have to recreate those. Now, that being said, that's something, again, we're more than happy to help you with. So that's something that we can kind of either help you out with just in terms of doing the layout, or sending over one of your Power BI dashboards for us to take a look at. That's something I've done personally recently. So we'd be more than happy to help you with that if that does come up. Just let us know and we'll be happy to help you. Let's see, what else do we have? How did you force selection of parameters? So that's just an option inside the report. What you can do there is, let's see, if I pull up that report, I can go in here. So, and you should be able to see this. Yeah. So this is my country parameter. This is basically all that it's doing. Now, what I have it doing is it's a multi-value, so I can select more than one value. It's going to prompt me to choose a parameter, and then I actually have that parameter filtering the data set where it's coming in. So that's how I forced that. Sorry, I'm just reading another question here. So this question is basically asking what's involved with creating your own data sources. Let me just show you that in terms of the UI for Wyn. So all you would do there is, this is our resource portal. So this is where I have all of my data sources and dashboards and reports. What I can do is hit create. I can create a data source. This question mentions OData, so we can choose an OData data source here. We connect to it. Once we have that data source, we create a data set, which can be used in the actual designers. So we're going to choose whether it's for a report or for a dashboard. We're going to choose that. We're going to choose the data source that we have created. And then from there, this is actually our data set designer. This kind of is a good segue into another question I see here about structuring data sets. So what we can do is actually drag and drop using this interface to create a very complex query behind the scenes, but it's really just a drag and drop UI for the end users or for really anyone. I can write queries, but I still find this tool helpful just because it's a visual way to model your data set. So this is kind of 3 different databases being joined all through this UI, and then we can see here, these are the fields I have here, and then we can rename these, format these, put filters and parameters on here as needed. So yeah, that should be a fairly straightforward process for you, though. Like I said, and this is my recommendation to everybody, is let's set up a one-on-one demo and kind of take a look at how you're doing things now, or how you'd be striving to do things, and we can kind of walk you through that. I do see a hand raised on here. If you guys can just send in your questions through the chat, that way, that's how I can keep track of these, and we can answer them after. Let's see. So you can actually do a stored procedure by adding a custom SQL table here. So if I'm just trying to think if I have a data source with a stored procedure. I don't think I do, but if I just type in the stored procedure here, I can add in the parameter values in this UI here. We can set up a call to go over that, and I can show you on a dedicated GoToMeeting if you'd like to do that. So any other questions? It looks like that covers everything that I have in my list here. If not, we will call it a day. I appreciate you guys bearing through that with me. I know some of the content was a lot of theory-driven things, so I appreciate you sticking it out on a Friday afternoon here with us. In terms of next steps, like I said, you will be getting a embedded survey to fill out. Please share your feedback on how I did, how the content was, whether it was helpful or not. That really helps us get an idea of kind of how we want to frame these for future webinars. And then for next steps with Wyn, visit wyn.grapecity.com, wyn.grapecity.com. That's our homepage. Requesting a demo, that's going to be a personalized one-on-one demo with yours truly. So please, if you're interested in Wyn, let's go ahead and do that. I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one. And then downloading, it's that link right there. Anyone who wants a recording of this or wants a PowerPoint of the slides that I have, please email either wyn.experts@grapecity.com, or you can email me personally. My email address is Ethan, ETHAN, .Conner, CONNER, @grapecity.com. Either way, I'll be in touch with you guys if you do need a recording or anything like that. But thanks again for everyone who registered and attended. Like I said, you'll see a survey pop up here. If you could take 2 minutes to fill that out, we really appreciate it. And have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.